What sort of an effect do you see the lack of football uh, and the use of furloughing for football clubs? What sort of long term effect do you think that that will have on the economy?
Well, the lack of football, I guess. Well, I mean, I guess you'd kind of argue that football is a big kind of net contributor to the economy. It generates a lot of kind of money through the television kind of rights, and to some extent that kind of does trickle down into kind of local communities. So if you look at a club like Barnsley, obviously there's the kind of players who take a kind of lion's share of the wages, but ultimately that is a club that employs a lot of people in the academy, in the shop, to do all the kind of ticketing, and so I guess ultimately, if football's not taking place, then those people's kind of jobs are potentially kind of at risk. Now, the furloughing scheme is going to help clubs for a little while. It's going to help them kind of tick over until the point where they can kind of start playing again, hopefully. And so the kind of impacts on the kind of local economy will be hopefully not so much. But I guess we'll have to kind of wait and see. It all depends really on how long it goes on for.
Theoretically, if this lockdown went on for uh, until like the proposed sort of what's been knocking about in this fear mongering media of like until like the new year, if this lockdown carried on until then,
Mm.
uh, how would you envisage the economy coming back from that? Like, do you think without like the injection of money from football, because there's huge money in the game, do you think that the economy will be able to bounce back from that in a short period of time, or how long do you reckon that would take?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I mean, you really hit the nail on the head with the question. In that, I don't think we kind of really know what the path of the economy will be. So, when we talk about it, we usually think of recessions as by the kind of shape that the graph looks like. So you can have like a V shape. So that's where you experience quite a kind of short, sharp contraction, and then but then you kind of come out of it the other side, and you kind of rapidly recover and get back to where you want to be. You can have more like a kind of U shape where you bounce along the bottom for a little bit and then you recover. You can have like a W shape, so you kind of go into recession, get back out, back in again, back out again. So I don't think we really know exactly what's going to happen. The experts are currently saying they think it will be actually quite a short, sharp, and then return back to normal. Um, but I think it's a little bit too early to tell. I guess if with on the specific question around football, I think I would kind of say, to be honest, if we're at the point we can't play football, then there's much bigger things that are kind of problems for the economy. So obviously, football is a kind of contributor to the economy, but it's one of a kind of number of service industries that kind of supports the economy. And if we can't play football, then we won't be able to have kind of restaurants open. We won't be able to have bars open. There's all sorts of things that also won't be kind of happening, and all those things together are going to kind of mean that um, ultimately for a kind of long time, we might not see a recovery.
Do you think that the furloughing scheme should be used for football players? And do you think that it's right that football clubs are deciding to use a furlough scheme for like their match day staff as well as players?
Yeah, it's a good question. So ultimately, I think you've got to be a little bit careful here in how you look at this, because it's kind of very easy to kind of point at football because it's quite a visible industry with a lot of money and say, oh well, those clubs are kind of rich and therefore they shouldn't be taking advantage of this kind of furlough scheme. It's a kind of moral obligation that they kind of fund this out of their own money. But that for me, that's the kind of wrong way to make policy. Just because that industry is visible, there's probably loads of other kind of business and industries that aren't quite as visible that will certainly be kind of taking advantage of the furlough scheme. So ultimately, you should never kind of blame people for taking up something that's available to them if they're eligible for it. Really, you have to kind of take issue with the kind of design of the scheme. So if you kind of wanted to stop kind of companies and businesses taking up that scheme, if they've got a certain revenue, then you should kind of restrict it at source, I think. Like for me personally, I think to kind of single out football um, is probably a little bit unfair. And within football, there'll be a kind of um, range of different circumstances the club faces. So yeah, of course, there'll be kind of clubs like Liverpool who made huge amounts of profit last year, who probably have enough cash flow to kind of pay their staff through this. But there'll be kind of clubs in the lower leagues who kind of live hand to mouth and won't be able to. And I kind of see people kind of pointing the finger at those clubs and saying, oh, they shouldn't be taking advantage of the furlough scheme. And I think, well, just because they're a football club, they still got big financial pressures. So, yeah, I think probably I'm kind of not in favour of pointing the finger too much.
Okay. I suppose the problem with like certain clubs deciding to use the furlough scheme compared to like other less visible uh, sort of microeconomies is the fact that um, a football club will employ like a lot less staff compared to like Debenhams or whatever. Like, so
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so it theoretically it'd be easier for them to sort of pay the staff
Yeah.
their own sort of cash flow
Yeah.
and provide.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that there are some clubs who could do that, right? Certainly, I think your likes of kind of Tottenham and Liverpool and a lot of the Premier League clubs who kind of rely on broadcast revenue that they certainly, I feel, should have enough kind of uh, buffer to kind of pay staff for a certain amount of time. So yeah, and you could argue they should really kind of do that morally. Um, but ultimately, if you think about kind of economic incentives, like what incentive have they got other than kind of societal pressure not to? Like it's a competitive business. They're all competing against each other. Of course, they're going to take advantage of anything that's on offer to them. Like that's just the kind of facts of life, and you can't really expect people um, to go against their own interests. Like they will always do what serves their kind of circumstances best. So ultimately, yeah, it'd be really nice, but they ain't going to do it. So if you want them to, then you need to kind of force them to really.